I'm Alastair Stevens.
I'm Elizabeth Ray.
And Tom Cruise is Mitch McDeere in The Firm. The 66th Academy Awards ceremony was held on March 21st, 1994, covering the movies of 1993. It was hosted by Whoopi Goldberg, and it was the Schindler's List year. 7 awards from 12 nominations, including Best Picture. Both Holly Hunter and Emma Thompson were both nominated for Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress. Hunter gets Best Actress for The Piano. Of course, Thompson, lamentably, goes home empty-handed. It is a great example of classic mid-90s Hollywood excess, and what's weird is that for no good reason, you and I just watched the entire ceremony.
It was a lot of fun. For some reason,
was.
YouTube was like, hey, do you want to watch this 1993 award ceremony? And I was like, yes, actually,
yes.
I do. I don't know how it knew that we had just watched The Firm.
Occasionally, the algorithm just gives you something that you didn't know you wanted, but wow, you wanted it.
Exactly so. There was a ballet dance to the music of The Firm. It was so odd.
Including a number of other scores, though notably not Jurassic Park. This was also, of course,
wild.
The big Jurassic Park year.
Yeah, there were a lot of great movies.
Let's kind of set the stage here. I'm going to read the nominees for Best Picture and perhaps Best Actor and Best Actress, and I just want your gut take. What do you think of this year in movies, and which do you think should have won? The nominees for Best I should do my voice. The nominees for Best Picture are Remains of the Day, The Piano, In the Name of the Father, The Fugitive, and Schindler's List.
That's such a wild list. I feel like The Fugitive is a weird outlier on that list. Like, The Fugitive was good.
The Fugitive is the populist outlier on that list, but this is also the year of Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park, though. Like, how do you put... Yeah, I don't know. Jurassic Park was so great, but this is, the Oscars, we're talking about it even right now. They're always just weirdly... I don't know. They're biased against movies that are big hits.
I think it's maybe even less that they have a bias against big hits and more that they are just in love with the narrative. I think the reason that Jurassic Park doesn't get nominated for Best Picture is that Spielberg is already extremely well represented in all of these lists.
Yeah, that's
because
right.
this is
Spielberg did Schindler's List as well. That's crazy.
Isn't it just a phenomenal thing? Yeah. I think In the Name of the Father is kind of the weird outlier.
That one I don't know anything about.
Yeah. Oh, have you never seen it? Oh, okay.
That's the one that Emma Thompson was nominated for. I remember from the clips.
Yes. Jim Sheridan's also nominated for Best Director for that one. And
was it Daniel Day-Lewis again? Was he there for that and Age of Innocence? That seems insane.
Daniel Day-Lewis is there for In the Name of the Father. He's not there for The Age of Innocence. The Age of Innocence did come out this year and is represented, but he is not nominated. And it is not nominated for any
much.
Really
it's like
big
everybody's
awards.
there for 2 movies.
Pete Postlethwaite is who I was thinking, of course.
Oh,
for
yeah.
The Name
He's
of
great.
The Father. Yeah,
That's
one of the weird things, right? It's for a year that is very much, pre-franchise movie making. We are not. We get Jurassic Park, but we don't get one of the Jurassic Park sequels. We're not yet in this idea of annualized sequels to big movie franchises. And yet, you're right, it's a weird year of confluence and convergence.
Yeah.
Because so many people are represented in multiple films. It's a bananas year. I loved the ceremony. I loved everything that is represented by that ceremony.
Yeah.
I think Whoopi Goldberg is so terrific, as a host.
Yeah, she was great.
Capable of absolutely navigating the need to be self-effacing and somewhat iconoclastic, but also very much on the side of the Academy, right? Like it's not, you're not giving a rebellious monologue at the Oscar ceremony. It's just terrific. This is the year that Anna Paquin wins Supporting Actress. This is why Holly Hunter does not win Supporting Actress for The Firm, is because she is beaten out by the 11-year-old Anna Paquin for The Piano, which is an incredible performance.
Yes, and they were sitting next to each other in the ceremony, so Holly Hunter got to be so excited for her when Anna Paquin was just absolutely speechless. It was pretty charming, actually.
Alongside Jane Campion and Jan Chapman, the producer, too. Just very good year.
Yeah.
What do you think of The Piano? We haven't really had the opportunity to talk about it. Weirdly, in this Tom Cruise podcast, The Piano hasn't come up very often.
That's a really good question. I do love The Piano and I love Jane Campion, but I don't know that I like it. Does that make sense? Like I love it and respect it so much, but it also leaves me just a little bit cold. I mean, the men in it are so terrible, which is the point, of course, but I still don't find it comforting to watch. It's just so upsetting.
I don't think that is the point. I think that this is the weird breaking point for me with The Piano, which is a film that I absolutely love, but I love it because of the women. I think that The Piano as a film loves Harvey Keitel.
Which is so weird.
Which is so weird. Because
don't know.
I can't.
No, he's awful. I don't know. Yeah, it's a strange one.
You know, the one that really stood out to me watching it was seeing Stockard Channing be nominated for Best Actress for 6 Degrees of Separation, which was so good.
I love Stockard Channing. I don't know 6 Degrees of Separation, though.
No, I don't know it at all.
Yeah.
But it was lovely to see her on stage being
Right.
nominated for something. And Deborah Winger, of course, for Shadowlands, because it's also the Shadowlands year.
It's insane. I saw Shadowlands too. Shadowlands feels a million years old, like a movie from, well, I say, 4 or 5 years earlier anyway. It feels like a late 80s movie, much more than an early 90s.
There's a lot to be said of we're talking a lot right now about the Oscar nominations that were just released and the screenplay categories, because
Bonkers.
the adapted screenplay and non-adapted screenplay
Doesn't
shenanigans
make any
are
sense.
just crazy. But the screenplay categories in 1994 for the movies of 1993 are just revelatory. I think they reveal so much about what was happening in the industry at the time. Best screenplay written directly for the screen. So this is Best Original Screenplay. The Piano, which wins. Dave, In the Line of Fire. Philadelphia, it's also the Philadelphia
that's
year,
right.
you
It's
guys.
Philadelphia too.
And Sleepless in Seattle, which
Sleepless. Oh my God.
how good is that, right?
What? It's so many movies.
But
That's
then
incredible. What a year.
The adapted screenplay list is Schindler's List, The Age of Innocence, In the Name of the Father, The Remains of the Day, and Shadowlands. So we were deep in Merchant Ivory, I think, is what was happening right there.
Wow. Okay, yeah. Adapted just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, especially considering this year in Maestro. Like, why does Shadowlands get adapted, but Maestro gets original?
Well, Shadowlands is based on a book, though.
Oh, was it? Was
Yeah,
it a book?
yeah,
first?
I think it was
All
actually
right. It
based
wasn't
on-
just a
yeah.
person's life.
No,
but usually a person's life also
Because usually movies that are about a person's life are adapted from a
happen
source
to be
book.
like a
And it's a
bio,
loophole that Maestro is not adapted directly from a book. It is adapted from, the events of his life.
Yeah.
Which, you're right, it is inconsistent. Well, that's the thing about the Oscars, though, right? It is
Yeah.
ruthlessly consistent in its inconsistency. The rules are stark and clear and will be obeyed and make no sense.
It is very because we say so.
Yeah. Well, what was your take from the Oscar ceremony in general? Did you feel good about the movies of 1993? Did you feel good about where Hollywood was? Did you feel good about representation and voice and diversity? Diversity of the sorts of films, perhaps not
diversity
like
of the
political
sorts of
diversity in the way that we would want.
Yeah. Of the genres and the sorts of films, yes, there was a great deal of diversity. Some racial diversity, although not a lot. Everything's still very straight, for sure.
Which is wild, because this is the year that Tom Hanks wins for Philadelphia. This is his best
but that
actor
was,
Oscar.
I guess that's what I mean to say is like, when we weren't straight, it was stridently so. Tom Hanks's acceptance speech was so lovely and moving. So yeah, I guess in that sense it was dated but still progressive, which is what I would expect and hope from Hollywood at basically all times.
That is,
there are always the outliers who are like the artists who are pushing forward, the future that they want to see, and there are always the ones who are like, well, big guns, big kicks, let's go.
It's that strange dichotomy at the heart of the Academy, I think, that it wants to be progressive and wants to be seen as being progressive, but it is also very
conservative,
self-congratulatory and self-laudatory and very convinced that it is already the best. It is already like the most important and best and goodest thing in the world. So really, how can you improve on that, right? Like in a powerful sense, where can you go?
Absolutely.
How can you gild this lily still further? Every lily gilded. That's the promise of the Oscar ceremony.
Yeah. Yeah.
Long-term listeners to the show may suspect that because we've launched into this discussion of an Oscar ceremony from 30 years ago, that perhaps we're not that enthusiastic about The Firm. Perhaps we're trying to push off the inevitability of discussing this film. Do you want to give me just a quick précis of your feelings on The Firm?
I love The Firm. This was a great movie.
Yeah.
It's a little too long, but it's great.
It's much too long.
It's much too long.
Much too long and much too slow. And you know who agrees with us? Is Sydney Pollack, the director of this film. He had 3 months of post-production to edit this film after the end of principal photography, which is really not much. Not for a film of this ambition.
Right.
And he said after the fact that, it is too long, it is too slow. He would have loved another 3 months to really tighten up the edit and make the film what he wanted it to be.
Yeah.
But for all that, it's kind of a blast. And
I liked it.
kind
Yeah.
of the film that you just don't get in movie theaters anymore. I feel like this is now the realm of prestige TV.
I was going to say, yeah, it
It's
definitely felt like prestige television.
weird
Or
to
even
be-
just like in an 8-episode miniseries or something.
That's
yeah.
exactly it. Yeah, it's weird to be watching this the week that True Detective returns to our screens.
Sure,
Right? It
yeah.
feels very much like that is where HBO is exactly where this story would happen now.
You're right.
You, I'm afraid, are carrying the burden this week of the trailer
The
game
trailer game.
for 2 hours and 20 minutes of an incomprehensible John Grisham plot. Are you ready? Are you feeling confident?
I'm not feeling confident, but I will pull it out.
All right, let's go.
Who would have guessed that a firm in Memphis, full of old, misogynistic, racist white dudes, would be bad at its core and at its heart? Mitch McDeere didn't, and it almost cost him his life. Follow Tom Cruise, Gene Hackman, Gene Triplehorn. 2 Genes. I love it.
A pair of jeans.
Jeans. Damn it, that was the joke. Holly Hunter, David Strathairn, Ed Harris. God, it's a really good stacked cast. In the John Grisham novel adaptation, The Firm. Dun dun dun.
I love it when the trailer guy starts editorializing about the quality of the
I
cast.
cannot help myself. I'm so sorry.
It is an insane cast, though.
Stacked cast.
We'll
Yeah.
get to all of that, but we really have to start, of course, with Grisham, because this is the beginning of an absolute phenomenon that will, in many ways, define both literature and cinema in the 1990s. John Grisham is a powerhouse of an author. He's born in 1955 in Arkansas. In 1959, his family relocates to Memphis, Tennessee, where he will later work as a lawyer and then serve as a state representative, and then just write some of the biggest novels of the 90s and the early 2000s. He has a book on the Publishers Weekly Top 10 list for every single year from 1991 to 2005 inclusive.
Wow.
And then again from 2007 to 2011 inclusive. He has written the best-selling book in the US in 1994 with The Chamber, in 1995 with The Rainmaker, in 1996 with The Runaway Jury, in 1997 with The Partner, in 1998 with The Street Lawyer, in 1999 with The Testament, in 2000 with The Brethren, 2002 with The Summons, 2005 with The Broker, and 2008 with The Appeal, and 2011 with The Litigators. His publicists say
Wow.
that he has sold more than 400 million books, which is 2/3 the number of J.K. Rowling,
Wow.
and almost exactly the same number as Stephen King, except that Stephen King has been writing and publishing books for 15 years longer than John Grisham.
Wow.
It is a phenomenal track record. And in addition to that, of course, the movie adaptations of his books are huge.
Yeah.
And his success is so fast. His first book, A Time to Kill, is published in 1989 with a very modest print run of 5,000 copies. The
I didn't realize A Time to Kill was Grisham. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
The
That's good
Firm
stuff.
is published in 1991, and The Pelican Brief is published in 1992. And then in 1993, movie adaptations of both of those films are released
Awesome.
to a cumulative worldwide total of $465.5 million.
Wow. That's the dream.
I mean-
Nice. You know what's great about this is that if
Tell me.
I saw a picture of John Grisham right now, I would not know who that man was.
No, he is
I-
not a distinctive looking fella.
I just think that's cool. When you can have like a name that everybody knows but a face that no one knows, that's freedom. I mean, you don't worry about paparazzi. You don't worry about everybody looking to see the next thing that you're going to say about whatever political thing is happening. You know, you don't have to make a statement about things all the time. You don't have that kind of Taylor Swift celebrity where just everyone's
Sure,
watching
sure.
you. But you have respect. You have
$500 million in the bank? Yeah.
there's a certain level of security there. Yeah, I don't know. Just the freedom to make whatever you want or stop making whatever you want and buy your house or houses and be a philanthropist and just live your life, man. That's cool.
So did you read a lot of Grisham back in the day?
No. I don't think I ever read any Grisham. I listened to one on audiobook with my grandmother once, and I was always curious which one it was, and I think it's the street lawyer. You just said it, and that must be the one, because
that's a latter entry. Yeah.
It was a latter, yeah, because I'm like, John Grisham, like, okay, when we were listening to it. Based on what very little I remember from that car ride, I think that must have been the one, because I feel like all of the people that he was representing, I suppose, were houseless people. I think that was like
interesting.
That was
sure,
the whole theme of the thing. So
I think that I have read that one. Though perhaps not.
It seemed cool.
That is a little late in my personal Grisham run. I probably around 96, 97, maybe even a little later than that, certainly jumped in and read his first, 6 or 8 books and just devoured them over the course of a summer, in much the same way as I did with Stephen King, in much the same way as I did with Michael Crichton, just kind of sinking into that milieu. And I will admit, a lot of his books, particularly after the first few, really do start to blur together a little bit.
It's just more of the same, which is still something I find, I respect the hell out of, I should say.
It is engaging. I think, he is in many ways, the poster boy for journeyman writer, right?
Yeah.
He is like the kind of writer that I think we both, in some sense, aspire to be. There are, I think, a few things which distinguish and elevate Grisham's writing in particular. It's not perhaps that difficult to do what he does on some level. It's not perhaps that difficult to write a fairly generic legal thriller. But Grisham, for me, has the ability to populate his worlds with really convincing and compelling sketches of minor characters.
Yeah.
I think his major characters often feel a little thin and maybe a little flimsy.
Sure.
A little bit like they're cardboard standees more than they are actually realistic, people. But his minor characters, because they need that much less development, oftentimes really pop on the page.
Yeah, that's what I remember from the audiobook, is that it just being so full of so many characters, and me being so impressed with the guy who was actually doing the voice work, because I could just see all of these different characters as he gave voice to them. It was really cool.
The other thing that really works for me is that Grisham is obviously a man of real principle in his actual life, and really believes in a moral good. He really believes in orienting his characters properly, challenging them, putting them through, moral and ethical tests, but then ultimately having their redemption or their conclusion be somehow connected to what he apprehends as a greater moral truth.
Yeah.
And I find that really, genuinely inspiring, honestly.
Yes.
It's a good vision of public servitude, I think. And though obviously we may have our doubts about the legal system and how it operates, he believes in the principle of a legal system.
Sure.
In a way that is somewhat inspiring, even if it's, very flat and very affirming of, entrenched modes and modalities of power.
What do you think of Grisham's politics? How do you feel like those hold up?
I don't know that much about the man himself. You're right.
Sure.
He is still, fairly enigmatic, despite being one of the most successful writers of all time. But the politics that come through in his books, there is a skepticism of large government. There is a skepticism of large bureaucracy in general. He likes neighborhoods and small communities where everyone helps one another, right? He's kind of got that in common with Stephen King. He's kind of got that boomer liberality to him.
Yes.
Where he believes that
boomer
it's kind of
exactly what Grisham is.
It's a kind of go along and get along kind of philosophy that as long as we stay away from the very powerful and the very wealthy, then really everyone can benefit. He obviously believes in the power of smart, educated individuals, by which I mean smart, educated men, to really effect change in their communities, and that is where the virtue lies. That is the point of being smart and educated, is to improve your communities, which, I can't really condemn him that much for that political philosophy, because it's not that far away from my own personal political philosophy. But I feel as though there's a good heart in Grisham's work in a way that there isn't in Crichton's work, right? There's that caustic kind of mean-spirited cynicism throughout Michael Crichton's work that I just can't really get along with. And there's a raw patriotism. There's a curdled patriotism at the heart of Tom Clancy.
Yes.
And there's even a kind of mean-spirited cynicism sometimes in Stephen King's work. And I'm equating these writers, of course, just because these are the big writers of the 1990s.
Yeah.
These are the guys who kind of define masculine fiction in particular through the 1990s. So of those, I'm pretty comfortable saying that I think John Grisham has the best heart. I think he has the best intention.
I think that's probably right. Best intent. Yeah. I think that's probably true.
And there's also, that quality of being hardworking. He's writing his books while he is serving in the House of Representatives in Tennessee.
Oh, is that true?
Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah. So he literally shows up early and writes every day. until it's time to start work. And then he works all day and then goes home to his wife.
It's amazing. I know I'm having like starry eyes right now. I've been thinking a lot about a writer's life again, just the last couple of days, which is insane because I'm getting ready to go to LA again and to work on a film. That's so exciting. But maybe it is all the Oscar stuff. The Oscars just, I don't know. There's something polarizing about them that bring out just the best and the worst of the industry. And I don't know. It makes me kind of want to go hide in a hobbit hole.
Right? It's that when you think about the industry, it maybe makes you go and be a little Thoreau. It makes you want to go off and hide in the woods and just write because it's such a solitary endeavor and you don't have to collaborate with anyone.
But I love collaborating.
I know you
too,
do. No, I
is the
know you
thing.
do.
I know.
And if you did go off to your own personal Walden, you would be fretting by the end of the week
It's
and wanting
true.
to go and make a movie or make a stage show or something else.
I just want to be a little bit of everything.
Everything? A Renaissance woman?
A Renaissance woman, I suppose, yes.
So Grisham writes The Firm in 1989, but publishers aren't terribly interested. A Time to Kill has not really set anyone on fire just yet. But Paramount producers John Davis and the notoriously hot-tempered and reportedly abusive Scott Rudin both get their hands on the manuscript for this book, and both send it independently to Paramount exec Lance Young. He likes the manuscript and buys it for a deal valued at $600,000. Davis and Rudin have to work together to produce the movie, and they go straight to Tom Cruise on the set of A Few Good Men and tell him that they want him to star and direct. Cruise flatly turns down the offer to direct, which
good for him.
I think is really interesting, honestly.
Yes, that shows humility, which is frankly rarely seen.
Yeah. But he is, of course, fascinated with the role of Mitch McDeere, who could honestly have been written for Tom Cruise. Davis and Rudin then shop the movie around. They go to Kevin Reynolds, director of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. They go to John McTiernan, director of Die Hard and Last Action Hero. They go to Ron Howard, director of Far and Away, but they all demur. In the end, Sydney Pollack, most famous at this point for his 80s movies Tootsie and Out of Africa, signs on to direct. Yeah.
Those are two very different movies. I haven't seen Tootsie, but I have seen Out of Africa, and I quite loved it.
This is the thing about Pollack, is that he moves from genre to genre with a great deal of purpose. He's clearly interested in tackling each film very much on its own merits and does not bring, it seems to me, a great deal of his own personal style. Rather, he finds the style that is innate to the project.
That's really cool.
You know, which I think you can also say of The Firm, though. Again, it's really hard to think about directing this film without feeling that the pacing issues just dog your sense of what the film is and what the film does throughout. Screenwriter David Rabe is hired to adapt the novel and takes a couple of really enthusiastic swings, by which I mean adds gunfights. Multiple gunfights, including, I believe, at the end of his first draft, Mitch McDeere goes to the firm and shoots all of the other lawyers.
Oh my God.
Yes. Paramount replaces Rabe with a writer called Daniel Pine, and then subsequently with another writer called David Raphael, who is a well-respected script doctor. He is told, adapt the book, keep everything the same. What are you doing? Except he has to go in and rewrite Pine's draft, where they had rewritten Avery Tolar as a woman because Meryl Streep had already been cast to play the role.
Wow.
Yeah. But they decide that that dynamic isn't working, so they reset back to the book's original position and hire Gene Hackman.
Yeah. I love Meryl Streep, obviously. There was a dearth of women in this film, obviously. But Gene Hackman's really special in it. I can't imagine it without him.
It would have to be a completely different character.
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely. Interesting. I'm sure it would also have been good.
By March of 1992, though, after 2 years of active development on this project, Pollack still isn't happy, so he hires Hollywood veteran Robert Towne, the screenwriter of Days of Thunder, who spent 3 weeks doing a page one rewrite. And if The Last Star in Hollywood has revealed anything to us, it is that 3-week page one rewrites are way more common in the 80s and the 90s than I ever would have guessed. It feels like every single script is stumbling to the finish line, is stumbling to that first day of principal photography.
It's so hard to write a script. It's so hard. Yeah.
Shooting starts in November of 1992 in Memphis. They shoot for 3 months until moving to the Cayman Islands in February, to DC then in the middle of March, and a couple of days of pickups in Boston at the end of March so they can shoot Harvard exteriors mostly, I guess. Yeah.
Still snowy up there. You cannot fake real snow. I love it when you go on
can't.
location. You just can't fake it.
It's really
just
gorgeous.
go.
That break to shoot in the Caymans must have felt wonderful
I'll
to everyone.
bet. Yeah. Felt wonderful to me. I was just watching.
Right. The movie's released over the 4th of July weekend in 1993 to mixed critical reception, but it demonstrates immediate traction with the cinema-going public. It ends up spending 26 weeks in theaters and winds up the 3rd most successful film of the year behind Jurassic Park and The Fugitive, above Sleepless in Seattle and Mrs. Doubtfire. It is still the most successful Grisham adaptation, and there are lots of those.
Wow. Yeah, that's cool.
And I mentioned how far out I am now on Grisham. I haven't read a Grisham novel in maybe 15 years, but I'll tell you this. Last year, a sequel was released to The Firm.
No way.
Called The Exchange. Yeah, picking up the life of Mitch McDeere 15 years after the events of the first book. So
wow.
I think I'm going to read that.
Yeah, why not?
So you mentioned earlier how stacked this cast is, and we have to get into that a little bit, but we're also going to have to be brief, and I'm sure we'll forget someone at some point.
Certain, unfortunately. Yes.
Let's start with bona fide Hollywood legend Gene Hackman, why don't we?
Let's. And I'll tell you why I want to talk about it is because my whole life until I swear to God this moment watching The Firm, I didn't really get the Gene Hackman thing. I didn't really understand why people loved him so much. I thought he was maybe just a guy's actor. And I was like, I don't know. Maybe because the first thing I ever saw him do was Lex Luthor. Because when I was a kid, that's what I've watched him. So I always
That's basically his entire 1980s, too.
Right?
Yeah. He is huge in the 60s and 70s because he really comes up with New Hollywood. He is the New Hollywood guy. Like, The French Connection is maybe the most definitive New Hollywood movie.
And I've never seen it.
Yeah.
So, so his early stuff I just hadn't seen. And then I saw, Enemy of the State in theaters, which was also him calling back to... He is, but it's just like a different... It's a thing that I would not have noticed or appreciated when I saw it in theaters at, 16 or however old I was when I saw it? Yeah.
No, he's out for most of the 80s just making the Christopher Reeve Superman films in which he plays, as you say, Lex Luthor, and he is not terribly good in those films.
I didn't feel that way,
he's
but also
miscast more than anything else, I think. But his real, return to stardom is Mississippi Burning in 1988.
Didn't see that either.
Which sets the stage for this, frankly, hell of a run playing kind of antagonistic douchebags through the 1990s. After The Firm, he's going to be in Wyatt Earp in 94, both Crimson Tide and The Quick and the Dead in 95, Extreme Measures in 96, and Enemy of the State in 98. Yeah. And then he retires from acting in 2004. 2004 was his last film, though he is still, by all accounts, in rude good health. So there are constant rumors that someday he'll come back and do another movie. But yeah, it's been 20 years now.
Well, I have to say, I liked him very much in this mentorship figure. And then I loved him when we got him in the Caymans, just being all starry-eyed for Abby.
Yeah. He
was so lovely.
Yeah.
I was really surprised by that. I think I had it in my notes, is Gene Hackman actually excellent? Is he wonderful? What has he been the whole time? I didn't know.
I think Gene Hackman is actually excellent, is actually wonderful. I think maybe has been the whole time. Yeah, I think he's so terrific in this. There are so many moments of lightness and levity. I think this is a well-written script, though it's a little... patchwork. It's a little cobbled together, obviously, from
line by line, very well written, perhaps structurally not so much.
Yeah. But I think that even when he is handed good lines, he still manages to find something to do with them. He manages to elevate them. The line that he gets at their first lunch where he's allowed his little rebellions is so good. Such a twinkle in the eye. And yet he's capable of turning on a dime.
Yes.
And bringing that menace. Just a fantastic performance.
Yep.
Let's move on and talk about Jean Triplehorn then, an Oklahoma girl. Did you know
Turns out I did not know that.
Yes. Born in Tulsa in 1963, a graduate of Juilliard. She graduated in Group 19 because Juilliard just has this weird thing of measuring their incoming groups. They just literally number each incoming group. Yeah. Cool. So she graduates in Group 19 alongside Laura Linney and Tim Blake Nelson. It's a pretty prestigious group out of Juilliard. She works a little in the stage and then really makes her movie debut the year before The Firm in Basic Instinct. She's the police psychologist in Basic Instinct, but this is really the one that sets her up. She'll appear in Waterworld in 1995, Sliding Doors. She's great in Sliding Doors in 1998, Mickey Blue Eyes in 1999, if you remember that one.
I do, yes, that's right.
But really, she will find a home on television. She'll appear in Big Love and Criminal Minds The Gilded Age, which I know you watched fairly recently.
I do watch The Gilded Age. That's right.
Yes.
She has a nice performance there. I remember her now. Yeah.
and I want to say this as positively and as gently as possible, is she perhaps more of a TV actress?
I think she is
than a
more
movie
suited
actress?
for television. Yeah. I can't put my finger on why exactly, but something about her does not stand out in the way that it ought to. I don't know. She is nice and lovely.
There's a theatricality, I think, to her performance that works for me, particularly in the beginning of this film. I was really charmed by her for maybe the first act of this film, honestly. The moment when Mitch comes home and turns up the music and then whispers to her the whole story in her ear, and her reaction is so big.
So huge.
It is so like soap opera stage play huge.
Yeah. That's true.
And obviously some of that has to be laid at the feet of Sydney Pollack for directing.
I was going to say, at some point the director has to say, can we take that again? But also I've been there. And
I need you to give me a third as much as you are giving me right now. But that is the kind of magnitude that I think plays better on television than it does in film. She's hitting a kind of a tone rather than hitting something that is like perhaps more naturalistic. But. But I think really strong here and a good chemistry match, I think, for Cruise.
Oh, I disagree. I think they had no chemistry at all. It was really disappointing to me. I just didn't feel they had any. Very brother-sister energy.
I do think they lose it quite fast, but there's some stuff right at the beginning when they're still very much, when Mitch is still a real wife guy right at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, the one scene in the apartment and maybe a little bit on the rooftop after the barbecue event.
Yeah.
They have a little bit of something.
How good does Memphis look in this movie?
Pretty flippin' good, actually.
Doesn't it look amazing?
It looks great. Yeah, they
I
really
would go
shot
there
for Memphis.
right now.
Yeah. It was interesting how they shot it. Memphis famously being a black city, and has been doing so beautifully, leading the way in a lot of ways. And shot so white, but on purpose. Like, they're really showing that the firm is not to be trusted right from the beginning, where they have like 2 black actors, maybe 3, I think. 2 of it's 3, because 2 are servants, like in full on like plantation style servant regalia.
Yeah, when they go to the Quinn house right before they learn that the other lawyers have died in the Caymans, and they are met at the door by a black housekeeper.
Awful.
It's chilling.
But awful on purpose and chilling.
That's it. Yeah, no, completely
and then there's
intentional.
like the kid doing flips in the street, and there's the guy playing blues, and you're like, whoa.
Here's the thing about that.
I see what you're doing. Well, everybody's eating barbecue.
Yeah. I cannot find evidence online that Tom Cruise really did that backflip down the street.
I don't think he did.
It's shot as though like he didn't. But if you watch it really carefully, if it's not him, then they found an excellent stunt performer who is a very close body match to Cruise himself.
I don't think it's him, because if it's him, you don't shoot it like it's not.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Yeah. But also everything we know about Tom Cruise is, he learned how to do 4 backflips down the street in Memphis.
And he maybe could do 1 or 2. And they were like, this is pretty good, but it's not as good as we need to be or whatever.
Such a weird moment.
It's a weird moment.
He's a Harvard nerd who also can perform mat routines like he's at the Olympics.
So strange. Yeah.
Let's continue our theme of weird connections to the state of Oklahoma with Mr. Ed Harris, who was enrolled for a short time at your alma mater, the school that is, I'm going to say, 2.5 miles from our recording studio right now, the University of Oklahoma.
Something I always forget. He always shows up on those lists of alumni. And I'm like, wait, what? But because he's not really.
He's not. He didn't graduate. No, he performed in local theater here in Oklahoma, here in Norman, and also up in Oklahoma City. And then, went out to LA to enroll at the California Institute of the Arts, graduating with a BFA in 1975. But really, I think Oklahoma can take credit for his performances. It's funny, you were talking about, having this moment of revelation with Gene Hackman. I had a very similar moment of revelation with Ed Harris this time. Not about him being good, because I think he is always compelling and is always great on screen, but about him maybe being a decent guy, because you hear these stories of Ed Harris, right? Famously cantankerous and extremely like hard-edged
to
and
work with,
professional, right? Does not give an inch on set to anyone. There are famous stories about him working with Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio on the set of The Abyss, as we mentioned back when we were discussing Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves over in the bonus episode,
That's right.
I'm sure. And probably even The Color of Money too. So he has this reputation as being real ornery. And I wonder how much of that is true and how much of that stems from just a real professionalism, that he does not come to set to play, he comes to set to work.
Interesting.
And I found myself really engaged by him this time. Do you think he's good casting in this film? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I love Ed Harris. I find him very sexy, especially at this particular stage of his career. And he's always compelling.
Really bald.
He's really bald.
At this point.
I like really bald guys.
No, but I mean, he's really bald.
I did want him
movie.
to have a hat on when he was outside in the cold. I was like, son, please. Oh, my God. You're going to catch your death of cold.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I like so well about Ed Harris is that he can give you this like awful, hard-ass, menacing, grimacing guy, but he can also give such warmth and openness and compassion to his characters. He's got real range. I like that.
Yeah, I think so. And if nothing else, can walk into a diner set, sit down, and just eat like 4 saltines in a row with no water, nothing. Like, what?
How?
What? And still speak at the end of that, Ed Harris? What are you doing? It's such a weird character choice.
I didn't notice. No, I will, I'm sure.
He will go on from The Firm, of course, to be brilliant in Apollo 13 in 1995, to be brilliant in The Rock in 1996, to be fantastic in The Truman Show in 1998, and on and on. And, of course, we'll have another tour of duty with Tom Cruise in Top Gun Maverick in 2022.
Yeah, cool.
And may well come back for the announced sequel. Who can say for sure? And I'm looking at my notes. I think that's it for the cast. I don't think there's anyone else that we have to talk about. Is there?
I feel... I see what we're doing. Holly Hunter.
Do
you want to talk about Holly Hunter, Alastair?
Maybe a little bit. The extremely brilliant Holly Hunter. My absolute number one screen crush of all time, Holly Hunter. Yes, I would, in fact, like to talk a little bit about Holly Hunter. She's born in Georgia in 1958. She attends Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh and then moves to New York City, where she shares an apartment with Frances McDormand in the Bronx, as they are both trying to make it. Frances McDormand also considered for this role in this film, which is
so different.
Such different energy. I can't even.
Whoa, hard to imagine. Okay.
Yeah. Brilliantly, Holly Hunter gets her break in 1982 when she finds herself trapped in an elevator with playwright Beth Henley, who is so immediately charmed that she goes on to cast Holly Hunter in Crimes of the Heart and a play that I've never heard of but absolutely need to see called The Miss Firecracker Contest.
I love that.
Hunter moves to LA in 1982 and then really breaks in 87 when she appears alongside Nicolas Cage in the Coen brothers' Raising Arizona and is nominated for an Academy Award for her unstoppable role in broadcast news that same year. In 1994, as we said, she is nominated for Best Supporting Actress for The Firm, which she loses to her co-star from Jane Campion's The Piano, Anna Paquin. But she does win Best Actress that year. She'll be nominated again in 2004 for the movie 13. She's also in Crash, the weird, sexy David Cronenberg one, not the one about racism.
Oh, okay.
And in A Life Less Ordinary, and in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And, of course, in The Incredibles, giving probably the best voice performance in Pixar, which is an insanely high bar. I think that she is just spectacular. She is in The Firm for less than 6 minutes. She has less than 6 minutes of screen time. It is one of the smallest, per minutes on screen roles that has ever been nominated for an Academy Award. But she shows up in this David Lynchian excess.
Yes.
It is fantastic.
I completely agree. I think she's wonderful. I think she's luminous. I think she's great in this movie. I hate that they give her such terrible wigs, but you know what? That's fine. That's not my best feature. Shut up. Oh my God. I will kiss you right now.
What is it about her, though?
I don't know.
Serious question. Why is Holly Hunter so magnetic on screen? Because she's been in some terrible things.
She
right?
has. Yeah.
I revisited A Life Less Ordinary not so very long ago with you. And that is a film that I was really fond of for a really long time. And that is a bad film. It is a bad film with some real high points and some real charm, but it is a bad film. But every second that she is on screen, I think she is magnetic.
Yeah.
What is it about Holly Hunter that is so compelling? She's fantastic in Zack Snyder movies, for crying out loud.
I wish I could say and harness it. I'm sure the whole world does, but I don't. She has magic.
Just an unstoppable on-screen persona, I think. And we'll watch her in anything. And I do think that she is genuinely brilliant in The Firm, in a role that is, I need her to somehow travel back in time and appear in David Lynch movies. From,
it
2000
seems wild
on.
that she's not. Yeah, she'd be perfect for Lynch.
Yeah. The other actor that we should mention probably right now before we get into it, not an actor that is particularly beloved of either of us, just because we're ignorant of most of his work, but we should definitely talk about Tobin Bell, who plays the Nordic assassin, the blue-eyed, blonde-haired guy, because that is Jigsaw from, as of this recording, 9 different Saw movies. I guess 8 different Saw movies and a Jigsaw movie.
Yeah, we're not horror people, so we wouldn't know.
He has had a very powerful late career surge with that role.
I thought this was weird casting for him because of the way the character was described as having like super blonde, almost white hair and these weird blue eyes. And you see him and you're like, that's the worst bleach job I've ever seen. Yeah. And it's just not what I expected.
The charter captain would definitely have to. He had a really weird bleach job.
A really bad bleach job.
And contacts, I think. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Exactly.
It is a very odd bit of casting. Yeah.
Dan Brown does it too. We have this thing where we like to make crazy hitmen like albino featured. I'm like, why would you do that?
Well, yeah.
He needs to not be identifiable. That's like the main job of a hitman. You know what I mean? In and out, nobody sees him, nobody remembers him. The
albinism in the Da Vinci Code, I think, is maybe a little bit different from this guy who is just Finnish, I suspect, or at least, of Nordic extraction. But you're right. It is a weird thing that we return to throughout in the late 80s and into the 1990s of having, exactly that guy, right? That tall Northern European.
Yeah, Viking guy who's coming for you.
Kind of cold, kind of impassive,
Totally.
It is a weird recurring archetype, yeah.
I don't know why.
Anyone else stand out to you? I mean, we've got Gary Busey playing the role of 200 pounds of cocaine in a bad suit.
We do. We do. And he's good and funny, I think.
This is my favorite Gary Busey performance. He is not an actor that I like, I have to say. He's not an actor that I connect with.
Though.
But this is, you're right. Show up for 2 scenes. Oh my God, we didn't mention David Strathairn.
I mentioned him in my trailer game, but we haven't talked about him in this. I don't think he's very good in this. I'm very sorry to say. I love him. This is a weird role for him.
It is a weird role for him. What doesn't work for you about that performance?
The voice work.
Interesting.
Why does he have so much of a Southern accent? Well, because they're both, West Virginia coal mines.
Yeah, presumably because he never left, right?
Right. I'm trying to put my finger on it. I don't buy them as brothers. I don't like his accent very much. I like him. I was going to say best in his last moments with Holly Hunter, but that line is terrible.
Yes.
I love your crooked little mouth is way too, you sure have a pretty mouth. And it's just, you can't deliver it like that.
Well, no, I don't like it either.
No, I'm sorry. But it's just where my brain immediately went with that West Virginia accent that he had. I don't know. She was so great that it doesn't matter and it gets buried.
The opening scenes that we get, though, let's clarify this. When Mitch first goes to the prison and we're introduced to Ray as a character, we get this one scene that is split down the middle by a cutaway to the firm, which I think is a really bad choice.
Mistake, yeah.
Because we're just trying to cover the exposition. But you can do that in a cut, you guys. Like, we have cinematic language where we can cover that illusion of time there. I think he is so warm, and I think that he allows Cruz to really rise to the material in that sequence.
Yeah,
I'm
see what you mean.
Interested in what Grisham is doing with Mitch McDeere as a character. I'm so interested in the complexity of this character's backstory, because he's anything but a boilerplate hero, right? He's anything but just a conventional leading man in this kind of story. He is so haunted and complicated and driven and contradictory in a way that I find really interesting. I think that Mitch McDeere is a really great character.
Yeah.
I don't know that the film exhibits that properly or explores that properly.
Yeah. I wonder how much of it is what Tom Cruise does with it and how much of it is just in the specificity, I suppose, of the writing and the dialogue. I thought such a standout line was, well, my father died in the coal mines, and he goes right past it.
Yeah.
And you learn so much about that character.
That's exactly it.
In no time at all.
We get that beat, and then when we get the beat with Abby much later where he's talking about, I just want you to have everything you gave up. And that's such a great line. And then we circle around and do like a minute worth of exposition.
Yeah.
We say the subtext.
Yeah.
And that's really disappointing. It's a really weird like deflation of these stakes that we have built between these characters, because now they're just explaining their life stories to each other, and it doesn't work so well. It's a dynamic that I'm still very interested in, but the execution, I think, falters there somewhat. But I like everything that gives us friction, everything that gives us insight on who Mitch McDeere is. When we get to the beach scene where the girl is being accosted by the guy, every heroic impulse in you as a storyteller wants Mitch to charge in and deck that guy and rescue the girl, because that's the dynamic that's being set up. And the fact that he doesn't is not a mistake.
Yeah.
It is a real exploration of his character. He's not that guy.
Yeah.
It is really interesting and kind of, I think, fundamentally mishandled by the movie. But what's left is still a degree or two more complicated than what we usually get from a Tom Cruise protagonist.
Yeah, I would agree.
What do you think of Cruise in this movie generally? Before we move into the beat by beat and really start pulling this film apart, what do you think of his performance here?
Generally, I think he's great. There are some moments that are maybe a little bit undercooked for me, but ultimately, I think he's good. I love how confident he is when he's guessing what's in the envelope.
Yeah.
Who's that actor also? We didn't talk about him. Deep Throat from X-Files.
Jerry Hardin and Hal Holbrook, of course, sitting right next to him. Fantastic character actor work.
Great work happening.
We need literally 40 middle-aged white men from the South. Can we do that? Oh, we can? Fantastic.
Excellent. They're doing it. It's perfect. Anyhow, in that sequence, Tom Cruise is so confident, or rather Mitch is so confident. And then to contrast that with how sweaty and beat up and this is awkward he is with the mob guys in the end is really lovely.
Again, I think this is an editing problem, but we hit those transitions just a little hard. When he comes back from DC and he goes immediately to the partners to tell them that he talked to the FBI.
Yeah.
And he's so confident and so cool when he's in the room. Then we literally
and
cut.
like sweats on the staircase.
It's too much. It's too much.
It is too much. And too soon.
Yeah, exactly.
And show it later when he gets home and he's pouring himself whiskey.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I agree.
So a lot of that stuff is just a little fragmentary.
But not his fault, I think.
No, not so much the performance, I think.
No.
Is this also, and I feel like I've said this for the last couple of movies, and soon we're going to hit a peak because I know where we're going and we're not going to stay here for very long, but this is the hottest he's ever been?
I like Far and Away Cruise quite a lot, but yeah, he's certainly handsome.
So you have him like at the top of the bell curve between Far and Away and here, and maybe
I don't know exactly where we're going, so we'll have to see. But yes, probably
next week. Do you not know what movie's next week?
I'm sure that I do.
Interview with the Vampire.
Interview with the Vampire, which he is not my type in that movie.
No.
This is not my thing. So yeah, brawling Irish guy.
It's a real fast progression from here for the rest of Tom Cruise's 90s, because we're going to do Interview with the Vampire next week. Then we're going to do Mission Impossible. Then we're going to do Jerry Maguire. Then we do Eyes Wide Shut.
I seem to recall him being very cute in Jerry Maguire too.
Yeah. Okay.
So we'll see. I don't know.
So with all that said, let's get into what's sure to be a effortless, breezy progression through this plot, right? There's really not that many wrinkles or complexities to deal with.
So simple.
Is it wild, just to jump all the way to the end, I guess, and break the format of our show completely, is it wild that most of the climax of this film is Tom Cruise in a very small room on the phone? That he is not doing until he is doing all of the action stuff.
Yeah.
He's not doing a lot of action stuff.
Straight up Mission Impossible for a while.
It is weirdly straight up Mission Impossible, which I guess, right, that is the justification for him doing backflips on Beale Street, right? Is to motivate our understanding. Oh no, he's also a crazy gymnast.
Yeah.
So that he can
totally swing from pipes and Yeah.
It's so good to see the Tom Cruise run.
It is.
Here we are in episode 16 of our show, and we finally got it. This is it. Full formed, full-fledged. This is the run.
The run. He's so good at it. He runs great.
It's unearthly.
It
looks
just awesome.
It defies description.
Yeah.
He is just the best at running.
He's so compact. Yeah.
It's so weird.
It's good.
Though apparently not quite as fast as Jean Triplehorn, who is significantly faster than him running down their suburban street, even though he's going full out and she's not really trying that hard. No, but honestly, I think that there is a real trick to it, because he is in the back of the shot. When we're focused on her running, he is in the back of the shot. He is clearly doing his Tom Cruise run, but he's just not gaining on her, which means that he is able to deliver all of that energy, but also modulate his pace.
Wow. Or maybe he's just slow and he makes it look fast.
That could also be it. Maybe all these cameras, maybe it's all just trickery. Maybe these cameras are, speed ramped just to make it look like he's fast. Maybe all these sets are built at 2/3 scale.
That's mean, but funny.
Let's get into it. Let's introduce ourselves to Mitch McDeere, a kind of a hustler, right? A poor kid coming up.
A hustler.
He hustles in the sense that he's
a hard worker and a high achiever.
A hard worker and high achiever is perhaps, yes, particularly how loaded the word hustler is for us here in this podcast. Mm-hmm. You're right. A hard worker, a high achiever, a graduate of Harvard Law who is being headhunted by the most prestigious firms in the country, and he's a real wife guy, which makes him perfect for Bendini, Lambert, and Locke, a firm in Memphis which really prides itself on being like a family in the late stage capitalist sense and not in the cult sense. Although a little bit in the cult sense. Yeah. It's interesting how quickly we get into it because we have a couple of other meetings and we get this montage sequence of Boston exteriors and we get that sense of, life as someone who's just emerging from Harvard Law into a market that wants to eat you, but then reward you very well for being eaten by this legalistic corporate machine. We get the introduction almost immediately to the fantastic Hal Holbrook, who is just so good as Oliver Lambert. And I think
it doesn't feel immediate, though. I feel like we get so much story and exposition before we land in Memphis, and yet the credits are still rolling. It's really interesting how it's done.
The pace of the film is kind of broken, not in a large scale format as it has been in so many of the films that we've discussed lately, but really moment to moment, edit by edit. We start every scene just a little early and we end every scene just a little late, and it feels glacial in parts. Or maybe not glacial, maybe that is an exaggeration, but we certainly feel as though we are taking our time. You're right, even though I think the intent is to move quite quickly. And it's also underscored by this very unusual soundtrack.
Yeah, the soundtrack is strange. I like it. I've decided that I really dig it.
Okay.
Although there's something quite 90s about it. But I wonder if that's because of this movie. If it's like a Grisham-y 90s, badunka-dunka-dunka, I don't know what.
No, it feels like it comes from television to me. It feels like it comes from
It does feel prestige TV a little bit. Not prestige, but like, 7 o'clock on Thursdays or whatever.
Early, yeah. No, that's certainly the thing. The entire thing is basically scored on one piano, which I think works most of the time. I think there were some times when we were trying to set a dramatic tone and the piano is just too twinkly and fun.
Yeah,
and
it is fun.
When we get to the actual action sequences at the end of the film, it gets very... there's only so much you can do with one piano, right? There's only so much you can do to really build tension. It gets very like thunderous and hammery in a way that doesn't quite have enough nuance. But overall, it's a very distinctive sound. And I do like it. But it puts me in mind of... I can't put my finger on quite the right reference, but like something like 30-something. Something like, early dramas, kind of Mad About You, kind of for the sitcom side of things.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
It's kind of got some of the, just
I get it.
TV in that era, I guess. In any case, Mitch signs with the firm for $96,000 a year, plus he gets his car, plus he gets his low interest mortgage on his house, plus they, in a couple of scenes, will repay his student debt for him.
It's supposed to be such a hot car, but God, it was a bad time for cars. It's still just a bad time for cars.
We've inherited bad 80s cars, and we are not yet at... Well, God, even late 90s cars are still kind of ugly. I don't know when they
start to come back. Yeah.
We'll track it as we move forward.
Okay.
We'll see. What is the first sexy car in a Tom Cruise movie? We'll get there.
Yeah.
That's $96,000 a year, by the way, in 1992, $200,000 a year today. So that is a hell of a package for someone who's just fresh out of college.
Yeah, that's nice.
What do you think of their home here in Memphis?
Charming.
Isn't it?
I really like it. Yeah, I don't
like
care for the interior decorating too much, except, despite myself, the lace curtains. I really like the floor-to-ceiling lace curtains. I don't know why. But the rest of it maybe, is a bit early 90s. Like I just need...
Yeah.
My mother always had like ducks and geese on the wall. Anybody else? I don't know. That was a big thing. But yeah.
So we have Mitch and Abby settling into their new home. Mitch gets up early the next morning, goes into the office to begin studying for the bar. Then we get that cute little montage of the entire staff of the firm, I guess, stopping by his office to offer both their expertise and mentorship.
Yeah.
And also to tell him that no one in the history of the firm has ever failed the bar. It's a good comedic beat.
It is a good comedic beat. I actually thought that they were going to turn it on its head and subvert it a little bit and say no one fails the bar because we see to it that it's like fixed or whatever. But they don't have that kind of reach, it turns out. But that was part of what I thought it was.
They bring it back at the very end. And I think that this is hit a little harder in the book than it is in the movie. When Ed Harris asks him how he thought of hanging the company out on the mail fraud charges, and he says it's in the bar. Like,
yep. They made me study for it.
It's nice. It's good. Yeah. We also here get the introduction to Avery Tolar. He really stresses that terminal syllable on his last name, Avery Tolar. And we slip out for an early lunch. And so far, a little flabby in the edit, but everything's crazy charming. Everything's really firing on all cylinders for me.
Yep, it's totally working. I love this set piece that they've got for the firm, too. It's just so ornate and overblown and over the top.
It's fantastic.
It looks awesome.
Again, I know we've already said it once, and we'll probably say it a couple more times, but Memphis really comes out of this movie looking real good. Though I have to say, because of the scene when they are in their car, in their new car going for a test drive.
Yes.
I went and looked up because it is such a weird detail. And I know that you will already know about this because I think that everybody already knows about this. But the pyramid on the skyline.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I did know about that.
I didn't know about that until I started watching this film.
Yeah.
Would you like to sketch the weird bass fishing store pyramid in Memphis for our listeners?
Is that what it is?
That's
I didn't realize.
is.
Is it a Bass Pro Shop?
It is a Bass Pro Shop. It wasn't intended to be a Bass Pro Shop. It was originally opened as an arena. It is, depending on who you ask and depending by what measurement you go by, it is the 9th or 10th largest pyramid in the world.
Okay.
Like, including, the pyramids.
Right, right.
Yeah.
No, I've seen it before. I've been in Memphis before, and I've driven through Memphis even more times. But I think I just assumed, I was like, oh, yeah, because Memphis is a city in Egypt. I see what we're doing.
Yeah,
and
right.
drove on by. I don't think it ever occurred to me it was actually inside of it.
It was built in 1991 as a 20,000-seat arena, and it kind of goes out of business in 2007. And then since 2015 has been a very elaborate Bass Pro Shop. With like a hotel and an archery range and tons of stuff.
Glamping, probably.
It's a very strange thing.
That's odd.
That I kind of adore.
Yeah.
But I'm thrilled that this film gave me the opportunity to go and do a little spontaneous research on Big Pyramid in Memphis? Question mark? I always add the question marks for Google. It's only polite. This leads us directly to, we're intercutting between the lunch with Avery and the unpacking at the house. Mm-hmm. And we kind of get our introduction to the fabulous Barbara Garrick, who plays Kay Quinn.
Yes.
Who has this line in this moment as they're unpacking. It's the South Abbey. We encumber you with hospitality.
So true. So correct.
We encumber you with hospitality.
There are so many great lines. I think it's a very smart script. I have the word smart written here probably 4 times.
I'm very tempted now.
Just by itself. Smart,
to go
period.
back.
I don't know what I was referring to.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. So these are just tone piece notes and commentary that you got here.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm very tempted to go back and reread the book. Now, if I had the time to do it, I would go back and reread the book just to see how much of that comes from the original prose. But that feels very authentic to me. We encumber you with hospitality. Mm-hmm. We get the visit to the Quinns, and this is where all at once the tone of the piece changes.
Darkens.
And it changes twice in very quick succession because Mitch and Abby go to visit with the Quinns for dinner, ostensibly, and they are met at the door by the black housekeeper.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, all of this display of wealth feels gross and artificial and like a facade over something that is much uglier.
Much more sinister.
And then just when you think you're getting it, we zag again because we have to reveal that 2 of the lawyers from the firm have been killed in the Cayman Islands.
In a mysterious boating explosion.
Mysterious boating explosion. Right? That's 2 words that don't normally go together.
Usually you would think they just went scuba diving and there was some kind of trouble and whatever in a cave and I don't know.
Some kind of
there
shark
are lots
attack.
Of things.
Sure.
Yeah, who knows?
But a boat explosion? Alternate title for the film I didn't mention. Sydney Pollack was considering calling it Boat Explosion! ! Didn't quite work out with the studio though. And then we get this scene with Quinn outside where the sprinkler is spraying on his legs. What do you think of that?
It was weird. I mean, after the fact, it works, I think, once you realize what's going on and this idea. I like the idea that all of the associates who work at the firm don't understand what the firm is until it's too late. And then it really is too late.
Yeah.
So I do think going back, that was interesting. But I don't know. It was between that particular moment where he's so still and the sprinkler hits him and the 2 creepy-ass twins at the funeral.
Yep.
Feels like a different movie for a minute.
Also that transition as he's sitting in the spray of the sprinkler and he's obviously, distraught. He's obviously, being pummeled by this news, by the death of his colleagues. And it's the end of that scene when he tells Mitch that he just has to drop off his forms and the firm will repay his student debt. That's all enfolded in the same scene.
God, crazy.
It's such a great tonal turn. Like, this film could also at this point turn into vampires. It could also turn into something like weirdly supernatural. It could do any number of pivots around this exact same fulcrum, I think. And it's kind of prosaic that we go to, it's a corrupt law firm that handles the money for the mob.
Yeah.
Okay.
I kind of wanted there to be some kind of like Illuminati secret in the basement, but okay. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I haven't read all of Grisham. I wonder if Grisham ever, in a post-Dan Brown world, I wonder if Grisham ever pivots.
Seems like he would.
And it's a ghost right at the end of the book.
That would be amazing. It's a ghost.
Oh my God, I want to read that. So we get the funeral and we get Avery and Abby trying to like outmaneuver each other with politeness, which I take to be like a very Southern thing. Although, does Gene Hackman read to you as Southern in this film? Does he read to you as though he's trying to give Tennessee?
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah?
More Southern than Midwestern, certainly. And he's certainly not giving me East Coast. So I hadn't really thought about it too much. But yeah, come to think about it, yeah, he's given big Texas energy.
That's exactly what I was getting, was Texas, rather than Memphis and like, Tennessee. I was getting something that was a little bit, but that kind of works because he is just a little bit out of step with the rest of the firm, that he's on the fringes of the firm in a really interesting way. I think you could explore that dynamic and that character much more fully than we do in this film, because of course it's not really his story. But yeah, I'm charmed by the story of the guy who's been on the inside for 20 or 30 years, From there, we move into another montage of decorating the house, decorating the office, Mitch staying late at work, of course. And then all at once, we're in the diner. All at once, Ed Harris shows up. A great and, again, creepy scene.
Yeah. There's a lot of Lynch here, now that you mention it. That's interesting. Was Lynch doing stuff? Well, he was, I guess. Lynch. This was
1993's like Fire Walk with Me.
That's what I thought. Yeah,
92 I think is actually Fire Walk with Me. So 1993, he's probably still very depressed, having failed so badly at Cannes with Fire Walk with Me. A great film. The Cannes jury, wrong then as it is wrong now.
Well, in any case, it seems like somebody who worked on this watched Twin Peaks.
Yes. I mean, we certainly get the references to Americana, right? To the trappings and the conventional tropes of our vision of contemporary America, right? We're in a diner, he's having the coffee. He's
the Elvis truck driver for some reason is very Lynch.
Very Lynch, but also very like Coen Brothers. Like it's got that kind of sensibility to it.
The
Holly
Hunter, 100%.
Completely Lynch.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That whole kind of, that whole, office, I suppose. Her and Gary Busey and all of the lighting
lit with
and
the
everything
neon
that
from outside.
happens
Yes,
there.
that's,
and then
that's like the most Lynch.
The most Lynch, yeah.
Yeah, that could be Mulholland Drive. That could be happening down the street from Silencio, yeah. Do you feel that all of these disparate elements come together? Do you think that this film, when it is done, when you have finished watching it, do you think that it is a thing in your brain, or is it 4 or 5 disparate things in your brain?
That's interesting.
Does it cohere?
Ultimately, I do feel that it comes together in the fact that it's just a vibe. Like it's just a cool, almost that Southern Gothic we were talking about earlier meets like there's just a little bit of noir mob story. There's a lot going on, but I'm just here for it. And maybe that's it, is that I just like it. So I'm fine with the disparate elements, but they are certainly there, and I could see where they would throw a person out.
Yeah.
I just like them.
The other Lynch aspect, I guess, are the somewhat genial mobsters right at the end. Is very Twin Peaks The Return. It's loaded.
Those mob guys who are like straight out of Central Casting mob types. Like, okay.
Mitch is obviously shaken by this meeting with Ed Harris, as you would be.
Sure.
And returns to the office to kind of investigate the deaths of the other lawyers at the firm. These 4 lawyers in 10 years.
Yeah.
It's enough to leave him kind of shaken, and he's there all night so that when he returns home, we have this fight with Abby where she's still bundled up on the couch and very like kind of simplified, right? She's kind of reduced in her complexity to just be a shrewish housewife at this point.
She's great at the beginning. She's great at the end. Well, I wouldn't say the end. At the climax,
I guess. Moments, I think, yeah, for sure.
But everything between here and now is awful.
Yeah, I think so too. Though we do here get to explore this idea of poverty being the wound that you can never really heal, being this like burden that you carry with you even when you have escaped it. That being poor, growing up poor in particular, is just a shadow that's going to be on you for your and not to pull back the veil too much. I know we both talked about this on other podcasts, but you and I both grew up poor.
Yep.
And it's still
a
shadow that is cast, right?
Yeah.
So I get that part of Mitch, I think. From there, we transition out to our trip to Grand Cayman, which is, just gorgeous. So the movie actually shoots on Grand Cayman, which is why it looks so stunning. And because it shot on Grand Cayman, had to include a small disclaimer in the final credits of the film. Did you read the disclaimer in the final credits of the film?
I'm interested.
It's really cute. Quote, "The producers wish to thank the Cayman Islands government and His Excellency Mr. Michael Gore, CBE Governor, for their cooperation in the making of this film, and acknowledge that the Cayman Islands have strict anti-drug and money laundering laws which are rigorously enforced."
That's hilarious.
I believe that is what you call a suspiciously specific denial.
That is. but I love it.
Thanks to the Cayman Islands, who definitely care about other people's tax laws and financial transparency, in case you were wondering.
That's amazing.
I mean, it's a gorgeous sequence, right? The Cayman Islands just luminous on screen. Did you get any cocktail flashbacks through this?
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, and just it did look so fun. Like, how cool to go and shoot in the Caribbean.
From there, and it's funny that you were just talking about the mobsters from Central Casting at the end of the film, because here's the mobster from Central Casting in the middle of the film. This is Sonny Caps. It is just a straight up mafioso, right? It's just that performance that we've seen hundreds of times at this point.
Yeah. Which I think it's fine. Like, it's whatever. For this film, it's fine.
What do you think of this interplay here between Avery and Mitch? Because we're really trying to sell the fact. We get the line at the end of this sequence from Avery when he says, "Protege, have you ever been one? I've never had one."
Love it.
So good.
It's all good and sharp and smart. This is a great sequence. Everything that happens in the Caymans, I think, is brilliant. Yeah. I think it's great.
I think so, too. I really like it.
And it really helps that I'm just going to always say this. I love it when we shoot on location. It's just better. It's more real. It's more plausible. I just like it.
So we get the picking up of the mystery threads here, I suppose. We get Mitch going to investigate the boat charter place that's going to come back so many times in this film that it feels, I don't know, maybe a little artificially constructed. And then, of course, going to explore Gene Hackman's secret closet full of banker's boxes with very meticulously labeled files, which is good. He drops his Red Stripe beer.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting note about this film, by the way. It led to a 50% increase in sales of Red Stripe in the United States. Yeah.
Wow.
Really turned up the numbers on that
I can fuck with a Red Stripe.
Absolutely. From time to time in the right circumstances.
In the right circumstances.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there an umbrella at my patio table? Then I probably want a Red Stripe.
There you go.
Let's go.
Yeah. So he drops his Red Stripe bottle in the secret closet, closes the door, and pretends like it didn't happen. And then we never come back around to that.
Again. I think the only thing that we're maybe supposed to infer here is that to some extent Gene Hackman knows the whole time that this kid knows something. It feels like Gene Hackman has a sadness about him, which is his knowing that this kid's life is getting completely screwed up.
The sadness of Avery, I think, is gorgeous throughout.
I do too.
I think particularly in his scenes with Abby later in the film, obviously, when they really come to the surface.
Yeah.
It's such a brilliant performance. It's such a brilliant performance.
It really is. I want to be here for Meryl Streep doing it, but it's something so different then that I can't really imagine it.
It would have to be just such a fundamentally different character.
We were just talking about this.
What's that?
It would be the character from Under the Tuscan Sun. Remember when she sees the woman in the fountain who's doing the whole, like, the Dolce Vita dancing in the water and the white dress thing, and she takes her home and she's like, oh, this is the woman I want to be. And then later on we get that she's actually quite sad and lonely.
Yeah.
It would be that. And that's interesting.
I think that's exactly it. I think that's a really great match. And
we would miss then, though, the two women being the ones that come to the Caymans and, like, pull the rug out from under this very masculine firm.
Yes, but there's that question over, how you resist the lure of the patriarchy and preserve your own femininity, and, like, at what cost? There's a lot of crunch there. That's potentially at least very interesting. Yeah,
it's true.
From there, we go on to the bar when, credit to him, Mitch very politely turns down that girl.
Very politely. Very politely. Yep.
Setting clear boundaries of consent, which is good to see. Mm-hmm. Then he goes out on the beach and we get into much more dubious consensual waters here.
Yeah.
We kind of alluded to this earlier, but I think that this is flat out bad. I think that this is flat out extremely bad. I think it's obviously, problematic. Mm-hmm. I think there's the way that Mitch's character interacts with this situation is at least interesting. It does at least give us some perspective on who he is as a man. As I said earlier, that he is not the hero. He's not the guy who rushes in, even though he's quite the athlete.
He doesn't backflip in and then...
But it perpetuates... And here's the thing. It perpetuates a gross idea about sex workers and a gross idea about rape victims and the victims of sexual assault. And I understand that the film, in some sense, is deliberately perpetuating those stories because they have a narrative power over people like Mitch, but you're still doing the thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think that you get a pass on that. It would take 2 minutes to sit down and come up with 5 better and more interesting plot lines for this character in this circumstance.
I agree. And I find it silly. Well, I shouldn't say silly, but it just leaves me cold that when Abby finds out about this, she's ready to completely leave him and their entire marriage as though he had just murdered a person.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, but it was a one-night stand in the Grand Cayman Islands. Like you can't just maybe talk through that. You can't say
maybe this is the privilege of our position in 2024 rather than 1993.
Yeah.
Is that I think there's maybe more of an assumption now that if you go to Grand Cayman overnight, you're probably just going to have sex with somebody.
Have sex with
I don't know.
Maybe you should. I feel like I don't know.
I would have wanted something more old-fashioned and conventional about Abby in order to make her to motivate her reaction.
I was like, what's more old-fashioned and conventional than this? Yes,
exactly.
But you're right. Beforehand,
I would have wanted an explanation. I would have wanted her to be she's actually staunchly Catholic. Like she's Boston Catholic, right? Like I guess he doesn't come from Boston either, but I would have wanted something in her character that would have motivated that a little more. You're right. Agreed. We don't get it. So after returning home, Mitch goes to visit with his brother, Ray. This is his introduction to the proceedings, which is fine. And I think it works out. And I like very much the idea that Mitch is going because he wants help rather than because he's feeling guilty about sleeping with this woman on the beach or because he's just feeling stressed. He's actually going to try and work the problem. He explains the situation to his brother, and his brother gives him guidance, which is go and see Gary Busey. He's in a different film, but it is just down the hall.
And a different state.
Yeah. Yes. The illusion of space and time in this film is a little wild, but I'm here for it nonetheless. And this is it. We get the introduction to Holly Hunter at her lynchiest.
So, Alastair, tell me, does Holly Hunter work for you in this film?
I see what you're doing. It is, though, weirdly a loaded question because she is giving so much of a performance, despite the very brief amount of time that she spends on screen, that it would be easy, I think, in the hands of another actor to try to give a facsimile of this performance and just be too much in every direction.
Yeah.
But Holly Hunter has that impossible ability to always land her performance in a very human and relatable space. And I'm not even necessarily thinking just about this sequence, the introductory sequence, or the sequence when Loman is assassinated, is murdered. But I'm thinking of the scene in the diner later when she's so frightened.
That's when she's so great. Yeah,
but
I think that's the moment. That's the clip that they played at the Oscars.
Complexity to what she's doing. I think it is an absolutely incredible performance. And I'm not surprised by that because I love Holly Hunter. But nonetheless, it is so bracing to experience the full breadth of it. And yeah, it feels like, the trite screenwriting aphorism that every character should feel like the main character in their own story.
Sure.
Holly Hunter is the main character in this film.
Yeah.
Absolutely is. There's another version of this plot. And honestly, there's another version of a John Grisham novel he has written about characters like this, where she is the protagonist and the story unfolds beautifully. Yeah. Does she work for you? Much more important.
She really does. She really does. It is a bit over the top. It is more character actory than other performances that are happening in the film. But I think she's such a breath of fresh air despite that. And I have in my notes later, Tammy greater than Abby. She's just great. She's so dynamic.
So much. Yeah.
She's very well written as far as she has goals. She's moving the story forward. Like if there's another protagonist in the film, it's her. And I think she's great.
She has all that complexity in her backstory, her relationship with Elvis, that they're married for 2 years. Then she wakes up one morning and she's too old for him. Throw that out in one line, and that's just a reality that she lives in.
And they got married when she was, what'd you say, 18, 19?
No, she's 16 when they get married. They've been married for 2 years, and she wakes up and she's too old for him.
Awful.
Yeah, no, awful,
but
right?
But
thrown out in such a casual way.
Yep.
But you still feel all the complexity of it in her characterization. I think this is, as we've said many times now, a stacked cast.
Yep.
I think wall to wall, the performances are great. I think Jean Triplehorn is probably the weakest link. And that's really because the script fails her in the middle of the film more than anything else.
Yeah.
And I think she is terrific at the beginning and pretty terrific at the climax too. there are just so many great performances, and Holly Hunter still, I think, stands out.
Yeah.
We should talk about Wilfred Brimley. Can we talk about Wilfred Brimley in the performance of his career?
Yes. Wow.
He's so spectacularly
He is
threatening.
great.
Yeah.
He is threatening. Who would have thought that the diabetes guy would be threatening?
This is what I'm saying, right? Known as
Wow.
being basically the textbook definition of avuncular. Right?
Yeah.
A
yeah.
friendly, relatable man who gives this steel-hard performance at the heart of this plot. It's fantastic.
Yep, it is. That's right.
And we kind of mentioned Gary Busey earlier. It is a very cocaine-y performance.
It is.
I like the
I like
writing very much.
I like it. Yeah.
It works. He agrees to take on this investigation. Mitch goes home to an increasingly suspicious Abby. We cut back to Lomax, and he is immediately, executed by our pair of assassins.
Sure. The albino assassin, who is not albino at all.
How does Tammy work for you as a witness to this horrific crime? Like, genuinely horrific. The fact that he is shooting pieces of Lomax off as a way of extracting the information from him is really
pieces of his ear. No, she's fantastic. The whole it's just good. Again, it feels almost like another movie, but I like that movie too.
Yeah.
I'm just having a good time.
And speaking of transitions here, all of a sudden we're in DC. We're at the tax law seminar, and we start playing real cloak and dagger stuff here as Mitch is led out to the mall to meet with Denton Voiles of the DOJ. Another great character actor performance. Ed Harris is right there. It could have just been Ed Harris. But we decided, no, we need one more guy just to round out the cast.
Yep.
Just fantastic. This is where we basically get the plot laid out, that the firm is corrupt, that it is serving the mob, that they want Mitch to gather evidence and then testify in open court, and furthermore, they're dangling the possibility of Ray's release over him. And I think that the conflict at the heart of this story, the way that it applies pressure to Mitch McDeere, is absolutely masterful.
Perfect. It's really good.
Get him on the horns of a moral dilemma, and then make it so that whichever way he goes, he loses.
Yep.
It's just masterful work.
It is. It is. And then seeing him think his way out of it is very satisfying.
Yes, that's extremely Grisham as well. He returns to the firm, and we get this great scene right at the heart of the film where he goes to the partners and tells them that he has talked with the FBI.
Yeah.
And kind of lays it all out. Holds enough cards to his chest that he has like plausible deniability and can continue to work the case, as it were, but also comes clean enough that there's no suspicion hanging over him at that point.
It's good.
He then goes home to Abby and tells her exactly what is going, well, most of what's going on. He doesn't tell her about the girl on the beach just yet, but he turns up the music and whispers in her ear, and a really beautifully shot sequence, I think, that is somewhat undercut by, this is where we lose Abby's characterization. I think this is where she turns into a much thinner version of herself. She runs down the street. We get the Tom Cruise run. Trademark.
It's a great run.
It's such a great run. It's so great. And then we really just start piling on incidental details. We have Mitch fighting with the photocopier in the morning because the firm is now tightening security. Tammy shows up with the fried egg sandwich and the instruction to meet her in the diner. She identifies the assassins, who then immediately show up in the company of Wilfred Brimley.
Oh, yeah. They get out of the car right then outside. Yeah. That's good.
And they politely take Mitch out to some godforsaken place. I don't know that this is shot in Memphis. This feels like it might have been part of the DC pickup because it's so cold wherever they are.
Yeah.
It was the middle of winter, I guess, in Memphis, but still. It feels very cold. And this is Brimley just giving his powerhouse performance. This is Brimley so steely, still giving that like facade of avuncular, friendly, protective kind of familiarity. This
is another one of those scenes that made me miss the X-Files.
It is an X-Files scene.
Definitely.
That's very astute. That's exactly what it is. That's exactly the performance that he's giving, in fact. Yes. That's very, very good. Yeah. Then Mitch returns to the office. He is called in front of everyone who is gathered there in the big boardroom that they have, and told that he passed the bar with the second highest score.
Pretty good, pretty good.
Tension just keeps ratcheting up that night.
Here I do think Jean Triplehorn is giving us something good. That look of abject horror on her face as she's trying to be cool and chill is pretty unsettling.
Yeah, no, that works. And then we go out for dinner, and this is where he confesses to the girl on the beach. And this is, I think, such an interesting part of his characterization, because what Mitch really resents, and this I think does tie very directly back to growing up poor, He resents the idea that anyone has power over him.
Mm-hmm.
He does not want to be driven by anyone. Doesn't want it to be Ed Harris, doesn't want it to be the firm, and doesn't want it to be the specter of his infidelity in the Cayman Islands. So he defangs that whole situation. He removes that blackmail potential by just telling her the truth. And if she's already somewhat thinned out by the news, by the conflict at the firm, this just simplifies her character still further, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
She leaves him in the restaurant, and we cut out from there to the partners telling Avery that Mitch has a brother. We're just increasing the tension in every direction. Meanwhile, Mitch and Tammy are playing Switch the Briefcase in the elevator so that he
Love
can
that sequence.
pass paperwork to her. He meets with a client who complains that he's being overbilled, and maybe Mitch sees a loophole.
Yeah.
He then goes to the dog racing track and baits Ed Harris into a very public bit of indiscretion. Saying way too much right here. But then we get this great line that crystallizes the entire conflict as it's surrounding Mitch when Mitch says, if we follow the law, it just might save us.
Yeah.
That is John Grisham's boomer liberalism. That is John Grisham's belief in the structures and the machinery of the state. He genuinely believes that that's true. And though we might not agree with it, we
in
kind
the
of
script,
envy the
yeah.
ability to believe in it.
Sure.
Maybe, right?
Yeah.
It is interesting, though. Now that you've mentioned The X-Files, I'm just thinking about this film in conversation with The X-Files, which is just beginning at the same time.
Right? It had to have been.
Yeah. And how The X-Files is looking ahead to the millennium, is looking ahead to our loss of faith in these structures, and how Grisham still feels very safe and traditional at this time.
Yeah.
Wow. Unable to forgive Mitch for his indiscretion, Abby quits her teaching job and makes plans to visit her parents, but getting word of their separation, Avery visits her at work, weirdly holding onto the fence as he's talking to her here and offering her a trip to Grand Cayman. She declines, but then becomes aware of the fact that he cannot... This is a made-up rule. Did you know this? This rule that you cannot go diving and then fly within 24 hours?
Oh.
This is made up. This is not true in real life.
Really?
Yes, this is
I
not
did not
true
know
in
that.
real life at all.
I immediately was like, oh, it makes sense. The bends and whatever.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's such a fantastic little bit of creation to force this conflict. I absolutely love how that works out. So Abby decides to go separately to Grand Cayman by herself in order to suitably distract Avery so that we can do what must be done. Then we get the sequence with Ray being released from prison, which is, again, such a great Ed Harris and David Strathairn through all of this sequence. I think we have them tailing him on the Greyhound bus, having let him go and apparently just driven off into the night. They then tail him all the way to the diner, which is when we get the reveal of Elvis, which is cinematically so deft.
Yep.
Nobody says a thing, and yet the audience is left in no doubt as to who this character is. And I kind of have to credit Holly Hunter for that, for the precision of her delivery on those lines. She manages to sketch this character so beautifully. But this is a very confident piece of storycraft, I think.
I agree. Yeah, this is lovely. And I love that we're giving these women something to do, like to really do.
It is striking how effective they both are and how, great and resourceful and scrappy Tammy is, and then to give Abby the emotional heart of the conflict, I suppose, because that's what happens next. She surprises Avery in Grand Cayman, and they kind of navigate around each other in a way that I find really fascinating and honestly quite bewitching. I think that Gene Hackman is so good through the sequence.
I would watch this movie too. Yeah. Like whatever this is, I would watch as well. It's very still.
Did it remind you a little bit of Lost in Translation? Or at least Hackman's performance is kind of giving older, sadder Bill Murray performance?
Sure.
You know?
I like Hackman more, though. Bill Murray never had that twinkle in his eye in the same way.
You are not a big Bill Murray fan, I think it's fair to say.
Not in that
in that mode,
yeah, exactly.
Sure. No, but you're right. It's the ability to communicate that charm and that confidence and that power, but also that regret and that self-loathing almost, but not quite.
And also like being disarmed, but like willfully, like laying down his arms, I suppose. Yeah. And just making himself vulnerable. Is that beautiful?
How you read the line when they end up back at the condo?
Yeah.
When he has that moment of lucidity, he has been drugged by Abby and he has that moment of lucidity. What are you doing here?
Yeah.
Does that feel to you like he is, descending into sleep and he's just lashing out at whatever is around him, that he is feeling just generally fearful? Or do you take that to be proof that he has suspected exactly this progression from the beginning, that he knows to some extent why she is here.
I think more the latter. I feel that Hackman is giving us in the performance this like increasing sense of both dread and denial for the consequences of his actions. And I think this is that moment where he knows where he can't be in denial anymore, I think.
Or at least the very terminal consequences of his actions are going to catch up with him in the very near future. He feels that this is coming to an end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get that sense too. And I'm not sure if that's a product of the plot or if that's a product just of Gene Hackman being incredible on screen.
Hopefully both.
Either way, this is a fantastic scene with Abby lulling Avery to sleep, even with the kiss, which should maybe feel gross or transgressive or it should maybe feel something, but is a very genuine moment of human connection, I think, between the two of them.
I think to some extent, I love what she says to Mitch later when she tells him, I think that you should know that Avery was decent.
Yes.
And what she say, he was corrupt and he was haunted and he was sad, but he was decent.
Yeah. Which is kind of contrasting him with Mitch, right? Who is so good and so honorable and so true, but kind of an asshole about it.
Yeah, interesting.
From there, we're really just into the progression of the plot. We're into the movement of the bankers' boxes. We're into the photocopying. We're into all the phone calls that have to be made. We're into the weird fax that goes to Wilford
but goes
Brimley,
unnoticed and rolls underneath the fax machine. Yeah.
Kind of a comedy of errors aspect there. Yeah. He's overhearing the phone conversation between Tammy and Abby, so now he knows what's happening. They're trying to get Avery on the phone. The whole thing is just unspooling. And it's tense. But there is maybe one strand too many here in terms of keeping our focus and keeping everything locked down. It's a little difficult to understand exactly where everyone is, how close we are to our victory condition, as it were.
Yeah. I like Abby sneaking back into the bathroom, putting the robe on, like she's not been gone at all.
That's so terrific. Yeah. And also the way that Gene Hackman plays his understanding that, in fact, this is not the case, that this is it is not what it seems. When he stops her from taking the robe off, when she's about to disrobe and slip into bed with him again, and he stops her because he knows.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
It's really good.
A really beautiful human moment.
Human
right
moment.
There,
yeah, I love those. Yeah, that's good.
So back in Memphis, we have Mitch sneaking into Avery's office to print out all of those bills. Devonshire finds the fax, I guess, that has rolled under the fax machine, realizes the connection, realizes that the brother has been released from prison, realizes that Mitch has made a deal. Luckily, Mitch manages to escape through Chekhov's truck in the alleyway.
Yeah.
That we foreshadow much earlier in the film.
Truck full of cotton.
Just a truck full of cotton right there in the alleyway.
Which I guess makes a certain amount of sense when you think that the office across the way is called the Cotton Building.
Right. Exactly.
So
yeah.
I guess something, I don't know.
Oh, this is where we cut out to Ed Harris, to Terrence being chewed out on the phone by his boss in a very classic noir scene. The voice on the phone there is Sydney Pollack. He's just chewing out Ed Harris.
Just doing the Gordon Cole thing. I like it.
You remind me of a small Mexican chihuahua. So we have Tom Cruise really taking in the sights here of Memphis, going to Mud Island, the local tourist attraction, I guess, getting seen there by Kay so that the assassins can track him. There's a lot.
There's
and
a lot
if
happening.
This film is too long, it is perhaps 10 minutes too long in this terminal series of action sequences. In fact, we get the extended foot chase, we get the being trapped in whatever that building that's under construction is.
Yeah, plus the whole going to the museum on the boat thing. Yeah, there's a lot here. Too much.
There really is. Mm-hmm. We have the showdown with both the assassin and with Wilford Brimley, with Devonshire in that building, and both are killed, which, credit to Mitch McDeere, he kind of just takes in stride. He kind of just shakes it off. And then goes to meet with the mafia guys.
He looks like a sweaty, nervous wreck when he gets up there, though. And he's got a black eye forming. I don't know.
Such an atypical Cruise performance, isn't it?
I mean, I feel like I've seen him hang above a precipice with sweat dripping to the floor before.
Not yet, you haven't. You will again in another 3 years. But not yet, you haven't.
You're right. So far, atypical.
Not this part. The part when he goes to meet with the Morelli brothers. And he is, he's doing a version of the fast-talking, confident guy, right? He's doing a version of that Tom Cruise archetype that we've seen before. But you're right. He's so sweaty and disheveled and just does not look well.
Yeah.
He does not look handsome in that moment.
No.
He looks like a guy who is
nervous.
clinging onto the edge by his fingernails.
Which he is.
Yeah. But it's a much less polished, much less self-confident performance from Cruise, and all the better for it.
So much better. Yeah, I really do. It makes me much more in the character's corner.
Yeah. And the way
if he came in with a swagger, then I think that I'd be disappointed.
Yes. Yeah, particularly after killing 2 men in a basement.
Yeah. And this really is a gamble. Like, it's true. It might not work. This might not work.
Yeah. And obviously, we flag a little bit, the connection with how the FBI took down Al Capone in real life. It's obviously not that dissimilar. It really works for me. And I think there might be a specificity in the performance of the Moralto brothers. I think I just said Morelli brothers a moment ago. The Moralto brothers here
are guys,
are mafia boys. Yeah. They are, yes, it's central casting. And yes, it's kind of predictable. But the performance in the moment is great.
I think so, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is basically the climax of the film. Getting these guys to agree to unlock their invoices so that the firm can be taken down. They're not touching the mafia at all, but the firm is going to be driven all the way out of business, and Mitch does not have to violate his ethics. He gets to remain a good man. He gets to keep his oath, but also do the right thing. It's a really satisfying ending.
It is, yeah.
That then gets a little bit flabby because we have to do the showdown with Ed Harris a little bit. And then we have to do the reconciliation with Abby, which I think is not a great scene, honestly.
Yeah, it's a little bit thin. It starts nice. Like, I love when he asks twice, have I lost you? Or did I lose you? Or whatever it was. But then when she finally says, how could you lose me? ? I'm ready for her to say something else. And instead it just kind of like they hug and it fades to black.
Oh, no. That's the end of the weirdest thing that she says. I've loved you forever before I ever knew you. I loved the idea of you. Oh, Abby, sweetheart, that's not a good relationship.
It's not good.
That's a red flag. That's not okay. That's not romantic. Yeah, that's dysfunctional. It's
weird.
Yeah.
You're right.
It's kind of, but you know what? We can disagree about this. You can like the Abby scene. And I let it slide earlier. Sure. I really did. But I really like the Ray and Tammy scene. I really do. I'm thinking about it now in my head, and I like your crooked smile. It's good. I would follow them for a sequel movie. No trouble.
Their spin-off show.
Yeah. Just like living on a boat, I guess.
Yeah.
Because there is that weird implication, right? When he's talking to the mafia guys, there is the weird implication that boat will just be out there forever, carrying a 1/4 ton of documentation that is evidence of their wrongdoings and malfeasance. And if anything happens to Mitch McDeere at any point, that boat will put into dock and suddenly these guys will go to prison.
I just put together that wasn't a metaphor and why he said, in fact, I'd say I'm exactly like a cargo ship. I get exactly it now. Like. It's okay. Yeah. I get it.
So good news, Tammy, Ray, you live on a boat now forever. Good job. I mean, not like I wouldn't go and live on a boat forever with Holly Hunter. I'd miss you, but you'd understand.
I'd probably go with David Strathairn too. I think that's okay.
We're going to need a bigger boat. And on that note, we're going to conclude this discussion of The Firm. I think this is a great film.
I agree.
It's very consistent, really, I think, generally speaking, including its very consistent flaws. We get some thin characterization from Abby, and we do get this editing problem all the way through. It's just not as tight as it should be. And this is the kind of movie. These thrillers really need to be tight in order to maintain lines of clarity and lines of conflict. So it's not perhaps an all-time great, but it's way up there, and I enjoyed it a great deal. Let's turn our attention, shall we, to the big list. And I'm going to throw out a very bold stance here. I think that this film is right below Rain Man.
Interesting. I definitely enjoyed this more than I enjoyed Rain Man.
Oh, interesting.
Does that make it better? I don't know. But I was thinking in my head, not knowing what the list was exactly, that this was going to be somewhere around Rain Man, A Few Good Men territory. So sticking it in between those two, I feel comfortable. If I can.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing.
Above.
No, I think that Rain Man is a more polished and complete film than this is, but Rain Man is also a much less ambitious film than this is.
True.
It's just trying to do less. And you're right, probably, the highs here might outstrip the highs of Rain Man. So I'm happy to put it there. Is there a conversation to be had about it going above A Few Good Men, or is that really a hard line for you?
I I don't think so. I think A Few Good Men was better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then we'll put it in right there. The new number 3 on the list, beneath Top Gun and A Few Good Men, The Firm from 1993. That was an absolute blast discussing it. Guys, The Last Star in Hollywood is a Next Word production, and it is possible only because of your incredibly generous support. If you would like bonus episodes of this podcast, including Last Action Hero and Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and any minute now, gone in 60 seconds,
Yep.
because the logic of our bonus episodes is impossible to discern, then you can head on over to patreon.com/nextword. Pledge your support, listen to those bonus episodes, cast your vote for what bonus episodes we're going to cover in the future, and come and hang out with us on our fancy schmancy Discord, which is so much fun.
And we also have those Laid Back Insider podcasts, too, available to the Patreons, where we're just talking about whatever we want to. Most recently, the Oscar nominations.
I always forget to mention those, but you're right.
Yeah, those are my favorites.
Those are monthly plus. We do at least one a month, and oftentimes more than that, because we just have a good time. And those are completely unedited, and we play games sometimes at the end of those podcasts, and just talk about whatever's on our mind. And we just spent an hour, in fact, talking about the newest Oscar nominations.
This was before we knew exactly who was going to be
right
nominated,
before the nominations were announced, yes, but talking about the awards season as a whole, and our response to some of the films of 2023. That was a really fun conversation. Elizabeth, would you like to thank by name our superstar patrons?
Yes, I would love to give our heartfelt thanks to Leslie Skipa, Kimberly Bear, Art Kilmer, Louise in Dallas, Megan Louder, Phoebe, and Self on the Shelf. Thank you so much.
The very best of people.
The best of people.
When we talk about a stacked cast, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that list of people.
True.
The greatest you'll ever meet.
The people I would invite to my Oscar party.
Right? Guys, thank you so much for your support. We couldn't do all this without you, and we couldn't do next week's show, which I promise is going to be a ton of fun. Next week, we move to November of 1994, and the Baroque Gothic weirdness is Neil Jordan's adaptation of Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire.
Yes, which apparently is a TV show right now, too. People are saying good things about it on Threads.
Everything is a TV show. All Tom Cruise films. I believe that there is, in fact, a TV show of The Firm that I didn't even mention, because everything is getting readapted for prestige TV formats.
Sweet.
Next week, Interview with the Vampire. We will, I think, probably record that in costume. What do you think?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, all right, let's do that. Until then, guys, thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Until then, take care.
Bye.